Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Yeah, good. Well, welcome. Welcome to the Moon Night 2023. My name is Mahesh Anand, and I'm your host tonight. I work here at the Open University. I'm a professor of planetary science and exploration, and my research is all about the moon. And I hope that you are here today to enjoy what we have to offer, what we have to share with you about the exciting research that we are doing about the moon, and how we are playing a small part in a big effort of returning to the moon once again, with humans landing in not too distant future. And I would also like to extend a special welcome to those who are joining us online. I know that there are many of you who couldn't get a ticket to be here in person. Unfortunately, we could only accommodate that many people in this lecture theater, but thank you for joining us online. So welcome. Also, welcome to a few groups who have made a special effort to come here. First of all, MK College. Is there somebody from MK College? There you are. Welcome. We also have a group of MK Scouts. Scouts, are you here? There you are. Good to see you there. We have a jam-packed evening. There are lots and lots of things on offer for you to enjoy. But before we do all of that, and I think some of it you have already seen, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what's there so that you have the full knowledge of what's on offer and you can pick and choose. I don't think you will be able to see everything, but that's why you should come back. Before I do that, a few health and safety announcements. As you know, when there are a big group of people assembled at one place, there is always a chance of trips and minor accidents and fire hazard and whatnot. So please do take care of yourselves and people around you. And when you are handling material outside with the hands-on activities, be careful because some of it might be too heavy for you to handle, so watch out for those. There is no fire alarm planned. So if there is a fire alarm, you really need to get out of the building. And there are signs posted everywhere. You can see those with the green man or green person. And you should go out. The assembly point is where you came in. So there is a car park there right at the outside of the building. That's what the assembly point is. And people will guide you. Somebody like me who might be wearing an orange lanyard, so I'm a fire warden here. And likewise, I have a few colleagues who are also fire warden or fire marshals, and they will guide you towards the exit point. Hopefully, we don't have to come to that. You're here to enjoy the evening. Feel free to take as many pictures, videos, whatever you like. But when you are here in the lecture theater, I request that you put your mobile phone on mute so that it doesn't disturb somebody else's enjoyment. Also, if you are happy to be photographed or videographed, then you don't have to do anything. But if you don't want to appear in any photographs or videos, then please let one of my colleagues know. And by now, you should have already received a sticker if you already let them know that you don't want to be in a photograph, and you should be identifiable by that. If you are adventurous enough to actually take part in a short interview, one of my colleagues will be going around and talking to you and trying to find out, your experience of attending this event, what brought you here, what we can do better next time. Please feel free to do so. Those are some of the health and safety and housekeeping stuff. What else we have here? So let's just run through. You've got 2 floors of activities there as you come in, that floor and the floor downstairs. Some of you have already been there. There are a number of activities there that you can take part, and it's open to everybody, and there isn't anything that I'm aware of that is actually hazardous other than handling some of the heavy meteorites. But I'm sure you all want to hold a piece of moon or a piece of Mars in your hand and things like that. So aside from those activities that are offered outside, we are very fortunate that today we are going to be showcasing a couple of pieces of short art performances. Because moon is not just about the science, and moon is everywhere. In so many cultures, you have folklore that are always invariably about the moon, and they involve the moon. So today what we have tried to do is to showcase what the moon is like in the Indian culture, and we are glad to have the presence of some artists who are going to actually perform live a couple of pieces that they have put together for us to convey some of the scientific aspects of the moon through the medium of music and dance. In addition to that, we also partnered with a primary school in East London in the borough of Newham, and we challenged, and I asked primary school kids in that school just a month ago, really, can you actually imagine something about the moon and bring a piece of orchestra to actually express what you feel about it? And they actually took the challenge, and they sent me a video which is about 4.5 minutes long, and it's a mixed orchestra that this 10 to 12-year-old kids have put together for all of us here. Unfortunately, they can't be here with us, but I'm sure that you will actually appreciate their effort that has gone in putting this piece together. And in this process, actually, they have learned a lot about the Earth, the moon, the solar system, and a few bits around it. And I'm sure that they are going to come back to me and asking lots of more questions, and we can build on that partnership. So after I finish my introduction, what I'm going to do is to play you that video from Nelson Primary School in Newham. And after that, we will have a dance performance, the first of tonight. The second one will be towards the end of the event. When you go outside, you will have a few stations. One of the stations will take you through the history of lunar exploration over the last 60 years, right from the days of a space race all the way till very recently. And we have a very interactive poster where those of you who actually might remember some of the top songs of the year in which those things happen might be able to actually relate to that and reminisce that time if you are lucky to be that old. You can also walk on the moon. You can visit the area that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin visited in 1969, thanks to the virtual reality. And my colleague will be very happy to assist you with that experience. So do take part in there. Now, I'm standing here representing a very large team at this university, which is very busy right now as we approach the Christmas Eve, not because it's Christmas, but because we have an instrument that we built at this university which will be flying to the moon, hopefully on Christmas Eve. All right? And you can see that instrument, a replica of that instrument, and you talk to that group just outside, and they will talk you through about everything that they have done up until this point to contribute to this mission. But that is just tip of the iceberg. We are at the Open University involved in almost all major missions that are going to different planetary bodies, be it Moon, Mars, Venus, you name it. So this is your opportunity also to learn a bit more about what's happening at the Open University, ask us questions. And then if that piques your interest, there are colleagues on hand who will also guide you to many free learning material that we have available through our website called Open Learn. Now, there are millions of articles, not millions of articles, there have been millions of people who have already used the Open Learn website to gain tremendous amount of free educational resources. However, if you then get further interested, you can also ask my colleagues about what it is like to study at the Open University. And perhaps one day you might consider studying with us if you're not already studying with us. So that's all on the this floor on which we are on. When you go downstairs in the cafe, you will have a chance to actually get your hands on the real moon rocks and Mars rocks and see all different types of meteorites that have been collected from all over the world. We have a special colleague here who comes every year. It is his private collection that he's actually displays to the public. And he has got his station set up downstairs alongside our researchers who are actually working on some of those rocks. You can look at those rocks in hand. You can also look at those rocks under a microscope. And again, those of you who are actually daring enough and would like to pick your own meteorite under a microscope, there is an activity there. So do take part. Nowadays, we can't not talk about sustainability. But to go back to the moon is not a choice. It's a necessity. Because we cannot go back to the moon without thinking sustainability in the first instance. Now, there is a lot of research that is taking place here at this place and elsewhere in the world where researchers are trying to figure out how do we go back to the moon in such a manner that we cause minimal damage to the local environment on the moon while utilizing the resources that are present in situ. And it's an area of research called in situ resource utilization. And when you are challenged like that, humans, they come up with new innovations. So there's a lot of innovative research that is going on, what it would be like to go back to the moon and stay there for longer periods of time in a sustainable manner. Be it extracting oxygen from the rocks themselves, because there is no free oxygen on the moon, or using the material on the moon to build your own habitat, so that you don't have to carry your bricks and mortar from the earth. Now, it might seem science fiction, but I hope that when you go downstairs and you see some of those examples, you will feel that actually there is a lot of effort going in to actually solve those challenges. And when we get to the moon, we also have to grow our own food, because only that much you can carry from the earth. If you're interested, you can take part in a citizen science experiment where we are going to offer you a small plant pot which has a couple of seeds in it. You take home, You grow your plant, and then you report your results using a QR code that is on the outside of the box. And the best thing is that the plant pot has been created using waste material through 3D printing. So there is nothing that you are taking home that is actually not recyclable, or what I call it is geodegradable. It's not just biodegradable, it's geodegradable, because it's everything to do with the geo. It's the material that you are actually handling with. Okay? So we have only limited number of boxes. It's first come, first serve. But we hope that between now and Christmas, you would look after it, you will grow your plant, and you will report the result. And then we can include it in our wider research. Other than that, we have some tours lined up for you. You can see some of our world-class laboratories at these universities. We are very proud of that. In fact, that is one of our biggest strengths here at this place, and that's what puts Milton Keynes on the world map. I would argue you can also go to look at the sky. If the sky is clear, a little while ago it was looking cloudier, but I thought it's going to be clear tonight. And you can go an observatory tour, and you either can look at the moon, or you might be able to look at Saturn or Jupiter and some other constellations as well. And I hope that in next 2 hours, you have all of those, all of those activities having participated in, and then you will come back here, because we then have another dance performance. This is a classical Indian dance called Bharatnatyam, and we have got 2 artists here who again have taken on the challenge of conveying some of the science of the Earth-Moon system through the medium of Indian classical dance. And in this case, is the relationship between the Earth and the Moon, the difference in the gravitational field. And then what we'll do, we will finish the evening around 8 o'clock. We have a very special guest who will be joining us. She is one of the most recent UK astronaut, and she's going to be talking to us about her life experience of going from where she started all the way to becoming an astronaut through her passage to Antarctica. So I think please come back here in the lecture theater between 7:45 and 8 o'clock, and we should get started with the final bit of the event. So I think I have covered almost everything. And those of you who are the younger members of the audience, all I would like to say is I would like you to imagine what it would be like to live on the moon, which means that what will we need in order to enable living on the moon a reality. For that, I want you to be creative. For that, I want you to be imaginative. Okay? But above all, you need to remain curious. Because if you don't have curiosity, you're not going to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you're not going to find solutions. Okay? So my request to you would be use this evening to find out as much as you can about what's going on here at the Open University, why it matters to you. Tell us why it matters to you. You have a moon wall where you can express yourself. Take a pen and just write down whatever comes to your mind after the event. Okay? And then ask us loads of questions so that we can go back and actually try to answer those questions. So we can't answer all your questions tonight, but we will come back to you with some answers. That much I can promise. So with that, I would like to invite my colleague, Divyanand Khair, who is a music teacher, and he is the one who worked with the primary school children in Newham, and he is going to tell you a little bit about the background before I play that video. Divyanand, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mahesh. Good evening. So I teach Indian music at a primary school in East Ham, as Mahesh mentioned, and I've been working with this diverse, multi-ethnic orchestra for over 2 years, East Ham Group. And the idea is to engage the children in whatever way possible through the performing arts and with science. So this challenge, we have started a journey now, and basically they came up with a very imaginatory story of how the moon is lonely, and there's a group of space cats that travel to the moon and form a village there, and then the sun, seeing the moon lonely, gives it a very warm hug. And at the end, there's a big black hole that swallows the entire universe. So that's quite an image. And at the end, you'll see they're going to show it through different sounds they have imagined, and then with an Indian musical piece that I have taught them. And that piece is a visual representation that shows the space cats left a map of their journey to space. So hope you enjoy the video. Thank you.
Thank you, Divyana.
But how do we know that this even happened? Well, the space cats left a map called a colour wheel that showed their course across space.
I think they deserve a round of applause. I think it's just amazing what they could come up in less than a month. And I hope that by doing that, they actually stumbled upon lots of questions. There's so much physics in there that you could see. There's so much science in there, and just using that vehicle of music, we might have suddenly actually unleashed a lot of imagination in these young people. And who knows, which avenue they might follow to address some of those questions and where they might end up. So I'm really grateful to Divyanand and the Nelson Primary to engage with it, and I look forward to continuing our association. So what we are going to do next is I will invite my other colleague, Matangi, who actually has conceptualized the next piece, and she will introduce the background about the dance piece, for which I think we are going to turn off the projector and dim the light. And once the performance is over, then please make your way outside and then take part in the rest of the activities, and then be back here by 8 o'clock for sure. Okay, so with that, I would like to invite Matangi to introduce the next piece.
Thank you, Mahesh. So this evening, we are exploring Bharatanatyam on the moon. What is Bharatanatyam? Bharatanatyam is an ancient Indian classical dance form, or the South Asian dance form. And it really finds the antiquity can be traced all the way back to the 4th century BC to a treatise called Natya Shastra, which was written by a sage Bharata. So for this evening in our experimentation, we have used a traditional piece called the Allaripu. The Allaripu literally means blossoming of a flower. So this is part of our traditional repertoire. And we have looked at what does the impact of gravity have on this piece. So we have two dancers this evening. We have Amrita Vashani and we have Divija Melali. So they will both be presenting this. And we have Divyanand, who will play the stringed instrument called the veena, and I will be singing what we say called the sholikatte, or the rhythmic syllables, as well as giving some rhythm along. So I hope you enjoy our take through Allaripu.
Ta lưng cứ ta cái ta tiếng gìn á tụm ta tây y tây yum đát tam kít ta cái ta tây tây yum đát tam kít ta cái ta tây tây yum đát tam kít ta cái ta tây y tây yum đát tam kít ta cái tam đế tam kít ta cái tây y ta tây y kít ta cái tam đế tam kít ta cái tây y ta tây y kít ta cái tam đế tam tây y ta tây y 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 tam tê ta tây ta tây 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 tam đế tam kít ta cái tây y ta tây y kít ta cái tam đế tam kít ta cái tây ta tây y kít ta cái tam đế tam tây y ta tây y 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 tam tê ta tây te tam te ta de 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 te tam de tam kita tak te ira te I kita tak tam de tam kita tak te I ta te I kita tak tam de tam te I ta te I 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 tam de ta de te 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 ta hat jam dari jaga dari te hi ta dingina tom tak ta dingina tom tak dhiku ta dingina tom tam drig tak 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 talam ko tom kirta ta tom ta te yum ta tam kita tak tam
Hello, for people online, this event will restart at 7:45. That will be 7:45. Thank you. Yes, yeah, no, we are slightly running behind. Yes. people are coming. Right. Welcome back, everyone. Nice to see so many of you still here. You must have enjoyed yourselves, and yeah, you can't wait for the next two events, I'm sure. So before we close the evening, I just wanted to remind you about the putting your mobile phones on mute, or if you want to put it off, please do so. I'm glad to tell you that we also have some of our senior members from the university joining us. So it's amazing to see everybody taking part in this public engagement event. Please don't forget to tell us what you liked about this event, what we could do better. Right? We are always looking for new ideas, yeah? Whether it was too long or it was too short. I know that not all of you were able to see the labs as well as the observatory and the other hands-on activities. And that's why I always say that please come back. There's always more. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my colleague Matangi to introduce the next piece of art performance you are going to witness, and is related to the Indian classical dance called Bharatnatyam that some of you heard right at the beginning. So Matangi, if you would like to explain the second piece.
Thank you, Mahesh. So for the second piece this evening, we will use facial expressions and other hand gestures to describe the moon. This in Bharatanatyam we call Abhinaya. And for this, we're going to use a song composed by a poet from the 18th century called Muthuswami Dikshitar, and it will be in the language of Sanskrit. A little gist of the piece is basically we say, "O mind, please sing about the moon, who is the heart of the holy ones. He is the Lord of stars, worshipped by the god of rain. One who waters the earth, has 16 phases, and who makes night," and so on. So hope you enjoy the piece, and yeah, all about describing the moon through the words of the poet from the 18th century.
Indum shoda sakala dharam निशाकरम् इन्दिरासहोदरं सुधाकरमनीशं चन्द्रं भजमानस साधु दय सदृशं चन्द्रं भज शशाङ्कं गीष्पतिशापानुगतं सरश्चन्द्रिकां धवल प्रकाशगात्रं अङ्करकेयूरहार मकुटाधिधरं पङ्कजरिपुं रोहिणी प्रियकरचतुरं चन्द्रं भजमानस दय सदृशं चन्द्रं भज
Don't go and sit down yet, Divyanand. I would like you to come here so that we can properly applaud your, piece. If you want to just come up on this stage, let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you very much, Divyanand and the team. This has been a creation that took you about a month of practice despite illnesses that you face. So I'm really pleased to see that you were able to make it today. We weren't sure. So thank you once more. Those of you with us online, I hope that you are still enjoying the event. Please don't forget that we are going to put all of the recordings on our OpenLearn website with a bit more wraparound text about these performances, so you can actually dig a bit deeper about the philosophical meaning of some of these dances, in addition to the scientific angle. So do visit our Open Learn website, where you can find not just about this, but many other things that you might find interesting. So without further ado, I would like to now introduce the final piece for tonight, which is a very special lecture given by Dr. Meganne Christian, who is an ESA Reserve astronaut. And Meganne is going to talk to us about her life experience of starting from, just as many of us, many of you in the audience, and just dreaming big. And hopefully she will demonstrate to us that the sky is not a limit if you have ambition and if you aspire high. So without any further ado, Meganne, over to you.
Thank you. Apologies if you're down here. I'm a bit short, so you probably can't see me very well. So, I'm just going to give you a little bit of my story, how I came to be here. So, from Antarctica to space, well, what does that mean? So, I was born in Kent, but as you can probably hear from my accent, I didn't live there for a very long time. When I was 5 years old, my family moved to Australia. So I grew up in Australia. I went to school in a town called Wollongong, and then I moved to the Big Smoke in Sydney to go to university at the University of New South Wales. I did a Bachelor of Engineering and a PhD in Industrial Chemistry. And then after that, I was looking for a postdoc position. I wanted to get some international experience. I wanted to do that in Europe because I had a European passport at the time. And so I found a postdoc in Italy, in Bologna at the National Research Council. And so I went there for what was supposed to be a 1 to 2 year postdoc. I ended up staying there for 9 years. Italy is a really nice country. And then the rest happened and I ended up back here. So we'll get to that in a minute. So just a little bit about my time at university. So I was lucky enough with my degree to have a series of industrial training placements as well. So I spent some time at a wastewater treatment plant and at a membrane technology institute, and also at coatings for steel, because in Australia most of your roofs are made of steel and they have to be coated with paint. So I had this series of industrial training placements and I did really enjoy them, but in the end I decided that I wanted to stay on and do more study, which is why I decided to do a PhD. And so I stayed on with my supervisor. He managed to convince me with basically chocolates and promises of overseas visits to work in his lab. And I did this PhD with the title Core Shell Borohydrides for Reversible Hydrogen Storage. That's a fancy way of saying nanomaterials for fuel cell hydrogen cars. So as I said, then I moved to Bologna in Italy. I changed topics a little bit, but I was still working on materials, nanomaterials. There's a list of some of my projects there. I spent most of my time in a lab, in a clean room, which is why you see me in that blue suit there. I was working on this material called graphene, both synthesizing it, characterizing it, using it for mainly alternative energy applications. But I also got to do this really cool project, which is what kind of brought me close to space in the first place. So I was using this material called graphene as a coating on materials that could be used as cooling devices in satellites. So you might think that satellites don't need to be cooled down, right? They're in space, it's really cold out there. Well, actually there's a lot of sun that shines on them too, so they have these kind of extremes of temperature, low and high. So they need some cooling devices for the electronics. And these have to work in zero gravity. And what do we do to test materials to see if they work in zero gravity? We do a parabolic flight, otherwise known as the vomit comet. And you can see why, because this plane does this maneuver. It goes up steeply and then down steeply, and for about 20 seconds, 22 seconds of that arch, you have zero gravity or weightlessness. And before and after, you have double gravity. So we're in weightlessness at the moment in the video, and then in just a minute, everybody falls down, the penguin goes a bit crazy, and now we're in double gravity again. And it does that 31 times throughout a flight. But this is to collect really important data on whether that device can actually work when you don't have gravity. Then, just to change things up a little, I've always been a curious sort of person, and this goes back to when I visited the International Antarctic Centre in Christchurch in New Zealand when I was about 12 years old, and I absolutely loved it. I just was fascinated by Antarctica, and I thought, oh, maybe one day I'll make a lot of money and I'll get to go on a cruise to Antarctica. I also really like to challenge myself, which is why I did research, because research is about challenging yourself every single day and coming up with new ideas. And I also love adventure, which you can see from the parabolic flight, but also from various sort of extreme sports that I like to do, whitewater rafting and climbing and that kind of thing. So for those reasons, I decided to actually go to Antarctica. And I had the opportunity to actually work there rather than just rather than spend my money and go on a cruise. So Antarctica is an incredible place. It's a continent of absolute records. And I should preface this by saying that I had this opportunity because I was working at the National Research Council of Italy, but it wasn't from my background. So my background was in materials science, but what I went there to do was actually atmospheric physics and meteorology, so something quite different. And I thought the first time this email came around asking if anybody was interested in going, I said, oh, I would love to go, but there's no way they would accept me. But then the second time, that second year it came around, I thought, you know what, I might just reply to that email and say, would you welcome an application from someone like me? And so they said, yeah, come and have a chat. It turned out that chat was an interview. And so I was accepted to go to Antarctica, so that's a little lesson for you. Don't count yourself out. So I got to go to this place that is the most isolated, it's the coldest, it's the most arid. Antarctica is actually a desert. It has the highest average height above sea level. Yes, in Antarctica there are mountains and volcanoes. The average height is over 2,000 meters. It has the highest wind speed, particularly on the coast. And at the same time as being a desert, it's the largest freshwater reserve on the planet. It's just that it's all caught up in ice. And in the top left there, you can see the patch of my winter over crew that I spent the year with. But of course, before we went to Antarctica, we had to do some training. And I did this with the Italian research, it's called PNRA, the Italian Research Institute in Antarctica. And they have two bases. They have one on the coast and they have one in the middle. I'll show you in a minute where Concordia is. So we had to also do training for a coastal station. And so we had to wear these dry suits and get pushed out of boats and then learn how to rescue people from boats. Unfortunately, that suit wasn't particularly dry, but the water in that lake was quite warm, so it was okay. I hope the ones in Antarctica are a bit better than those. One of the really important pieces of training we had to do for Concordia in particular was firefighting. Because Concordia is on over 3,000 meters of ice. And that means that you can't ground any of your electronic equipment. So you get a build-up of static electricity, and every time you touch something, you get an electric shock. But that can cause, actually, it can cause flames. It can cause an arc and cause a fire. And on top of the fact that it's a really dry place, that means fire is a huge risk. So we had to do firefighting training as well as first aid training. We also, to try and get used to the conditions, we spent a week out on the glacier on Mont Blanc. We only got down to -10, which was far from what we got down to in Antarctica, but at least it was sort of getting used to some of the conditions we might face. And of course, we also did a lot of team building, and that's, we spent another week in the mountains with just the crew of 13 that we spent for those 9 months to a year in Antarctica. So to get there, we started in New Zealand. I should say that I've been there twice. The first time I started in New Zealand, the second time I started in Australia. Flew on a military jet on a C-130 from Christchurch in New Zealand to the coastal station of Marizuchelli. That takes about 7 hours. Then from there, we took a small plane, this DC-3 Basler, to Concordia Station, which is about 1,200 kilometers, or let's say 800 miles from the coast. And that's another 4 hours. So all in all, you're looking at several days to get from Europe to Concordia Station. So this is just some pictures of getting there. So that was me at the Antarctic terminal in Christchurch. We had to put on our clothes before we boarded the plane, just in case we had to do some emergency evacuation. It wasn't a very comfortable voyage, I have to say. We were stuck in these kind of net things for 7 hours, and there's no toilet on the plane, just a bucket. Fine for the men. And then you don't each have your own window. So there's just this kind of one little window, and at one point in the flight, I suddenly heard people kind of murmuring, making noises. And we each took our turns looking out the window, and this was my first sighting of the sea ice, which was a really exciting moment. Then this is a picture of Mayuzakeli Station on the coast. You might think that Antarctica is completely covered in ice, but it's actually not. There are actually a lot of sections of which are sort of dirt, you know. It's a continent, so under the ice there is that, and when it's warm enough, you can have just that kind of floor. However, at Concordia Station, which, like I said, is on over 3,000 meters of ice, it's all snow. And so this is the view from my window when I finally arrived at Concordia, and that is the view I had for an entire year from my room. Now, the reason they chose this location in the middle of nowhere was for a project called EPICA, European Project for Ice Coring in Antarctica. So what they did was they drilled an ice core 3,270 meters long, and they cut it up into small slices. And as you can see in that photo in the top left, the slices contain lots of bubbles. And you can analyze those bubbles to find out what gases are in there. And the really cool thing is that you can connect where you took that slice from with the year. Because you know kind of the history, you know how deep it is, etc. So you can work out what period in history it correlates with. So that's where we got this really famous graphic of the amount of carbon dioxide and methane that is in the atmosphere going back 800,000 years. And yes, this very sad part of the graphic that says in the last 100 years it has gone up significantly. Now there's a new project called Beyond Epica, which is just near Concordia, which is aiming to go back 1.5 million years. So this will give us even more information about this. So that was the original reason for building Concordia. And it was in 1995 that they decided to actually go ahead and build the base. It took quite some time because they could only do it during the summer period, and the summer is for 3 months. It goes from November to January. And so it took a while before they could actually start having the base, but this is what it finally looked like. This is a drone video. And in fact, Concordia, the first winter crew in Concordia started at pretty much the same time as the first crew on the International Space Station. So these are the kind of experiments that are done there, the different things that are studied: astronomy and astrophysics, atmospheric sciences, earth sciences, glaciology, human biology, and remote sensing. And the base is made up of 2 towers. There's a quiet tower where we have our bedrooms and the labs, and there's a hospital on the ground floor. And on the right-hand side, there's the noisy tower, which is where we have our kitchen, we have a gym, a video room, and also some of the workshops. Then all around the base, you can see at the front there are these buildings, which are where we keep our food and keep all our supplies. Then behind the base, you can see all these little buildings here, and they're actually the labs where we work. They're anywhere from about 500 to 1,000 meters or more from the base. And yeah, I had to work in these labs every day. So yes, I did spend time outside every day, and that brings me to these values you see in the corner. We got down to a wind chill of minus 104 degrees Celsius. So it was extremely cold. The average summer temperature is about minus 30. The average winter temperature is sort of minus 70-ish. And then you add the wind chill to that. Another thing to note is that the pressure is very low. So here, we're used to a pressure of about 1,000 hectopascals at sea level. There, on a good day, the pressure was particularly high this day. It was 640, but it goes down to about 600, 610. So that means the amount of oxygen you're breathing is about 60% of the amount of oxygen that we are breathing here. And as you can see, those bases have 3 levels. That means a lot of stairs. So you really never get used to it the entire year. You're just out of breath every time you take some stairs. It does feel really great when you come back, though. When I came back, I felt like a superhero because I could just kind of run up hills and I had this huge lung capacity. I wish it had lasted longer, but it was good while it lasted. So safety is, of course, an important consideration. I was mentioning the fires before, and this is just a little video to show you how we escape from the base if there is a fire or some disaster that happens. We get to do exercises with this, and they're actually kind of fun. But it's called an escape sock. to show you a couple of my projects. This is Baseline Surface Radiation Network, which is all about measuring the solar radiation that comes in and that's reflected back into space. It's to calibrate satellites and also make climate models. And practically, what did this mean? Well, one of the things I had to do was go to this tower, which is about 0.6 of a mile away from the base, and climb up the tower, clean all the instruments, climb back down and head back to the base. The tower is about 45 meters high, and as I was saying, climbing stairs is tiring. So this was probably the most tiring part of the week. And I did it with a partner, so we would take it in turns who would go to the top and who would start from the bottom. And we both kind of didn't look forward to it because it was hard work, but also did look forward to it because it was the best part of the week, and this is why. So as we were walking out there, I should say, there are 100 days of darkness. So there are 100 days where you don't see the sun. So this is in the middle of the day, just so you know. So we would walk out there and we would take our headlamps off and just let our eyes adjust. And that way we could watch the stars. And in Antarctica, the stars are spectacular. So I saw so many shooting stars. And another thing, if it was a moonless day, you would actually see your shadow in the light of the Milky Way, which was just incredible. So you can see why I kind of thought, okay, maybe my next step is to go up there. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Most of the time I walked around with a paintbrush and a hairdryer to remove ice from things. That was my main job, aside from making sure all the data was getting through. Another one of my projects was the routine meteorological observations, so weather reporting, weather predictions, and also using these to go into climate models. So all around the world at a particular time of day, these weather balloons are launched. And so for me at Concordia, this was at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. every day I would go out and launch a weather balloon. In this case, I put a message on it for my husband because it was his birthday. But it also happened to be an extremely windy day, which wasn't very often. But as you can see, I nearly got carried away by the balloon. I don't have time to go through all my projects, but another interesting one was this one called SuperDARN, which is an ionospheric radar. It's quite different from the other experiments I was doing. And this one I looked after the second time I went to Concordia. So the first time I went for a year, the second time in the middle of the pandemic, I just went for a summer season. And you can really only work on this instrument during the summer because it's a long way from the base, 2 or 3 miles from the base. And during the winter, you can only go by foot. You can't take any skidoos or anything like that because they just won't function at those temperatures. And so in the summer, we would have to go through and repair anything that had gone wrong during the winter. So we'd have to go up in this cherry picker and clear the cables. But this experiment is a radar, and it's a network of radars around the world, actually, in the North and South Poles, to measure space weather. So things that happen with the sun and what effect that has on Earth. And then moving ever towards space, another project that we were all involved in was with the European Space Agency. So Concordia is also known as White Mars. And that's because it's the closest thing we have on Earth to what a mission to Mars might be. That's because of the isolation, that's because of the low oxygen levels, it's because of the small international crew. So the European Space Agency actually sends a research doctor there every year to do tests on all of us who are doing the winter over. So every month we would have our blood taken, anything you can think of. They took samples of it and analysed it to see how our body was reacting over time. But we also did questionnaires. We did skills, cognition exercises, and one really interesting project was called SimSkill. So they taught us to dock the Soyuz, that's this little capsule here, onto the International Space Station during the summer season at the beginning, and they gave us all sorts of tests doing it in a more and more difficult way in this simulator here. And then every month or every 3 months, depending on which group you were in, you had to do those exams again. Because if you think about it, if you're going to land on Mars, you're going to learn to land on Mars when you're here on Earth. And then you're going to take the journey, which may take 9 months, to Mars, and what might you forget during that time? So what's the kind of training program that needs to be set up? So that's what this project was about. So all of that led me to this. So just a couple of years after my winter over, and I'd heard rumors while I was there in Antarctica that the European Space Agency was going to open up applications for astronauts for the first time in many years. And finally, in 2021, they opened it up after 13 years. And I thought, great, I am definitely going to apply because I loved my experience in Antarctica. I loved running other people's experiments. I loved being in that extreme environment, small international crew. Unfortunately, 22,500 people thought the same. So there were a lot of applications and it was a long process. It took about 18 months. First of all, it was a screening based on our CV and motivation letter. Then there was this is not quite right, this was the original media, but what actually happened was round 2 was in Hamburg as a series of computer-based testing on things like maths and physics and logic and memory. There were some really tough memory ones. For example, they would read out a series of digits, so between 1 and 9, they would just read them out, keep going, we wouldn't know when they were going to stop. Then at some point they stopped and we had to recall those numbers, type them in backwards. And we had to get as many of them as we could. And it wasn't if you got, you got 3 from the end and then you got 1 wrong and then you got all the rest of them right. That doesn't give you all those points. That just gives you the 3 points that you got at the beginning right. So it was a tough one, probably one of the toughest. Then after that, there was the psychological round. So by the Hamburg round, there were about 1,300 people left. Then for the psychological round, there were about 400 people. This was in Cologne. It was a full day of exercises. We had interviews one-on-one with a psychologist and also in a panel of psychologists. We had teamwork exercises, we had pair exercises and a series of questionnaires again. Then from there, they took 100 people through to the medical selection. And this was a whole week of medical tests. They probed everything they could find. So really, really serious. And I think probably one of the most important things they were looking at was actually our eyes. It's not that you have to have perfect eyesight, but it has to be correctable to 20/20. And it's more that they don't want to have any eye diseases. Because one of the biggest things that happens when you're in space is that weird things happen to your eyes and they don't quite understand what. So your eyesight generally deteriorates. And for some people, it never goes back. For others, when they come back to Earth, it does go back to normal. So this is something that they're really trying to understand. And it's going to be something really important for longer-term missions to Moon and Mars. After the medical selection, they took about 50 people through to the panel interview. And this, for me, was probably the hardest part of the selections because it was a really tough interview. You think, oh, we do interviews to jobs all the time, right? Yes. But there was just something about this one. I think every time they thought you were in your comfort zone, they took you right out of it. And it wasn't just questions about, hypothetical situations that might happen on the International Space Station. It was also questions that you might get from journalists or from politicians or from children. So it was a tough interview. That was round 5. And then finally, round 6 was an interview with the Director General of the European Space Agency. And that was actually just really nice because he just wanted to chat. He just wanted to get to know us. So after the rest of it, it was kind of a relief. And then finally, in November last year, they announced the class of 17. And at every phase, I was just so surprised to get through to the next one. I was in one of the last groups all the time, so I was getting really worried. But then finally I was, honored and amazed to actually be in the final astronaut class of 17. So it's a little bit different to NASA. So NASA runs selections a lot more frequently. They recruit a lot more people, and everybody they recruit then goes through training. Not all of them get through training, not all of them get to go to space. But the European Space Agency wants to keep up its record of everybody who trains then gets a flight. So they have 5 flights available at the moment, so 5 people are training as career astronauts. The rest of us, including myself, we're members of the reserve. We're waiting our turn. I'm just hoping for my flight opportunity soon, and once that comes, I'll drop everything and start training. And it's not so far out of the possibility because the first person from our class to fly is Marcus. He's the Swedish reserve. So he's a reserve too, but he's got a flight in January. So he'll be going to the International Space Station just in 2 months' time, which is really incredible. Now, these are the kind of missions we're looking at. So you'll know about the International Space Station. After 2030, that International Space Station is actually going to be decommissioned and there will be commercial space stations in orbit. Then there's the moon. We're going back to the moon, and this time we're going to stay. So you will have heard about Artemis 1. Artemis 2, which is going to have astronauts on board going around the moon, will be next year or the year after. And then after that, Artemis 3, there will be people who set foot on the moon again. And then the idea is to build a gateway, a station that's orbiting around the moon, and eventually to have a base on the moon itself, or several bases on the moon itself. At the same time, we have a number of robotic missions that are going to Mars. We have some exciting ones that are planning to bring samples back from Mars for the first time. We have our very own Rosalind Franklin rover, which will be launching in a few years, and that's European. And the interesting thing about that is, unlike the other rovers, which can only drill down a little way, the Rosalind Franklin rover will be able to drill down 5 meters to give us a lot more information about what's happening down under the surface. Then the idea is that in the 2040s, we will send humans to Mars. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for that call to come, just like Marcus when he had that call and they said you have to be in Houston next week, I'm working at the UK Space Agency in the exploration team, and my focus is on post-ISS. So when the ISS is decommissioned, what are we going to do? So NASA has started running this program called the CLD, Commercial LEO Destinations. LEO is low Earth orbit. And they've funded a series of possible future stations. And so I'm working out where the UK fits into that, where our industry can support it, where we can get benefit from it. And these are some of the stations that are coming up. So Axiom Space Station is actually going to start being built attached to the International Space Station, and then it will get extra modules, and finally it will have enough modules to be able to break away from the International Space Station. Then there are these other couple of stations, Starlab and Orbital Reef, that will go up on their own. And VAST, which is a smaller station. So I'll just go back here. So there are all these things coming up, and it's quite exciting. Now, the important thing is that NASA has a zero gap policy. That means that, basically we've had the International Space Station up there since 1998. We've had humans on board since 2000, and we have done a huge range of really, really important research. And so we want to keep that research going. And so we want to make sure that the new stations are up and running for a little while before we actually decommission the ISS. So the plan is after 2030, but we'll just see what happens. And then, of course, at the same time, dreaming of the moon. And this is a little video. No, it's not playing the sound. That's okay. This is a little video made by the European Space Agency. Oh, there we go. About Artemis 1 and ESA's contribution, which was the European Service Module. The view I want to have. Sean the sheep was on board, so he was our first UK astronaut to go around the moon. So finally, I'd just like to show you these last few pictures of when I was in Antarctica. So one of the other messages I put on a balloon was "Women in Science, the sky is no limit," and that was for International Women's Day. We have this kind of platform when we're in Antarctica, or when we have astronaut somehow in our title, to try and inspire people. And so I just hope that you take away from this that you can dream big and big things can happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meganne. So inspiring, you know. It's amazing. We are not going to let Meganne go just yet. We have time for some questions. I'm sure Meganne will be very happy to answer them. We have got 2 roving mics. One is with Eliza, and the other one is right there, and I will give it to whoever wants to run on the other side. But in the meantime, we'll take some questions. Show of hands, don't be shy. Do you have questions? But everybody's in awe. There is one question here in the front, Liza, and Bianca, I'll get you the mic.
Hi. If you get selected, what will be your mission specialism?
So now all astronauts have to be able to do a bit of everything. So we don't really have a pilot, commander, mission specialist kind of situation. There are those formal titles for the arrival at the International Space Station. For example, if you go on the SpaceX Crew Dragon, then you'll have somebody who's called pilot, somebody who's called commander, and then 2 mission specialists. But everybody has to be able to do everything. Having said that, I do have a background in materials science, so I would hope to be able to contribute in particular in that area.
Thank you.
How long have you been waiting the call, or to say you've been selected for the space flight?
So I was selected in November last year, and it's not like it's just a list that they go through. It's when a mission becomes available. So I don't know if you've heard, but recently there was an announcement that the UK Space Agency has had a memorandum of understanding with Axiom Space, which is a commercial provider, to do a British mission. Now, this would be fully commercially sponsored, no taxpayer money, and this is where the difficult bit comes in because the sponsors have to come through. But that would be a possibility. So things are looking pretty exciting. So, but waiting, I suppose I've been waiting. It's been pretty much exactly a year since I was selected.
And what year do you reckon? Because some people think that people will be living on Mars soon. And what year do you think that would probably happen?
I think realistically, we'll see humans going to Mars maybe toward the end of the 2030s to have more of perhaps a station there in the 2040s. I don't think we'll see colonies on Mars for a while.
How do you feel about getting the International Space Station getting shut down?
Yeah, it's a little bit sad. I mean, it's been there for all of your lifetime. It's been there for more or less as long as I can remember too. And really an incredible amount of work has gone on there. There have been a lot of discoveries. And so, yeah, it's a little bit sad. But the prospects of these commercial stations are pretty exciting. They should hopefully open up access to more people to be able to go there.
Wonderful talk, thank you. I want to ask about the weather balloons that you have on screen here. So can you just tell us what do they do on a daily basis? Like what information do you collect? How do you process that in terms of informing people or informing science?
Sure, so attached to the balloon, there's what's called a sonde, and it's connected by radio to the base. And inside this sonde, there are sensors that measure the temperature and they measure the position, which gives you the direction and the speed of the wind. And they tell you about the humidity as well. And basically this it continues to go up towards the stratosphere. At Concordia, it generally makes it to about 30 kilometers, 20 miles or so. And Then that data it's in real time conveyed to the base. And first of all, that data is worked up into making predictions for the weather for tomorrow and the following days. But that data is also sent into global databases which make up climate models for the whole world. And actually, one other thing is that at some point, so it's going up in the atmosphere and the pressure around it is getting lower and lower, so the balloon is increasing in size, and then finally it pops and comes back down to the ground.
I think we have got the last question, or maybe two questions. Okay, so one at the back, and then one there. Oh, is there one more? Oh, three questions. Right, one at the back, then there, and then there.
Would you ever go back to Antarctica?
I would
after
love
you've
to go
been
back to
space?
Antarctica. I really enjoyed my time there. I think if I were to spend another year there, I think it would have to be with a new challenge, in a different position perhaps, maybe in a different base. But it's a really amazing environment that I would definitely go back to.
Yeah, thank you. Do you know why the International Space Station is being closed?
Do I know why it's being closed? Yeah, so actually originally it was only supposed to be around for 15 years. Like it was built to have a 15-year lifetime. Thank you. But it has managed to continue until now. So now it's been around for 25 years. It's just that the fact is that it keeps having all these stresses. So you've got the differences in temperature, you've got all the vehicles that are coming in and going out again, and that causes stress on the structure. So at some point, it's just not going to be able to be safe anymore. It's probably still a long time away, but we have to consider that very carefully.
How do you write the message on the balloon?
Good question, because when I write the message, it's on a deflated balloon. So when the balloon is deflated, it's sort of like this big and it's flat. So I have to write it smaller, and then it will get bigger when you inflate it. So to inflate it, you put helium inside it. So yeah, you have to practice a little bit to be able to get it right, but you write on it when it's flat.
Great. I think we have a final question here. I'm not sure if you're able to take any questions online. So somebody will correct me if that is not the case. But if not, then this is the final question.
What's your next step? What's your next step in, like, sort of your career?
Yeah, next step. Well, I mean, I've taken on this big challenge of starting to work at the UK Space Agency now, and it's really different to anything I've done before in terms of, you know, I've spent most of my time before working in a lab and doing research, and so this is a kind of exciting new direction for me. At the same time, I'm doing whatever kind of training I can do so that I'm as ready as possible when the call comes.
Thank you. Can we thank them once more? Thank you, Meganne, and thank you all. I'm so grateful for you all to stay this long to give you a few hours of your evening. It's not easy. And we really value your participation, both in person as well as online. As I said right at the start, we couldn't accommodate everybody's request for an in-person attendance. But hopefully, next year, those of you who missed out this year will come back or come to us, and some of you will also return. So I would just like to invite our Executive Dean, Professor Nick Braithwaite, to make some closing remarks, and then you can go home. Nick.
I won't take very long. I just want to say thank you very much for coming. What makes an event like this worthwhile is the interaction, and the buzz that I felt this evening has been fabulous. That's really good to have. I was there in 1969 when Neil Armstrong landed. I got up in the middle of the night to watch this. This will be famous sometime, my dad said. Gosh, how far we've come and how long since we've been there. That was the same year that the Open University started. And now to hear Meganne talk, absolutely fabulous. I'm so excited to be there to see when you go. I should be able to say, oh, I know her. So can you. Great evening. A lot of organisation. Mahesh, thank you very much for putting it together. You've got a great team behind you. And I know we have a number of people online who've been watching, and there will be people watching the recording. You've been important to be part of this too. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, everybody. Safe journey home.